The most valuable things, they don't happen quickly. They take a long time.
Chris Savage, co-founder and CEO of Wistia, a video for business, which we're using as well.
Everything we do is about making it easy for you to get more value out of your video and enable you to use video better.
And from starting in his co-founder's living room, Wistia has since grown into a multi-million-dollar business with over 200 employees and millions of customers.
We thought we would do this for 6 months and then get rich. We thought that's how startups worked. It took a lot longer than I thought before things really start to connect and work. It's very hard to know if you're doing the right stuff, but if you do it long enough, you end up training your intuition.
Based on everything that you've gone through, what would be an advice to your younger self?
The first thing I would say is,
but Chris, it wasn't an overnight success. Take us back in time to your college days.
definitely not an overnight success. No. I started Wistia with my best friend from college, Brendan Schwartz, and we thought it would be an overnight success. We thought we would do this for 6 months and then get rich. We thought that's what how startups worked, and that's not how they work. And so, it was a it was a lot. It took a lot longer than I thought before things really started to connect and work. And it ended up being a lot more fun than I thought. And I also realized you can take things much farther than you think. And so, yes, that's how I would think about it now.
Well, amazing. And I want to go there for a second because it started with some kind of movie that you got involved and, it took off. But how did that morph into Wistia? It's just such a beautiful story.
Yeah, so basically I had worked on a feature-length documentary in college and was very fortunate that we got distribution and won a bunch of film festivals and stuff. And I watched the filmmaker who had spent put so much into this movie. I watched it basically get at the last second not get full distribution. And this is before streaming online, really. And so that was kind of an industry that was gatekept, which is not surprising. That's how the entertainment industry works. But I saw that so early and I was like, this seems rough. This seems like a hard thing to work on something and actually have everyone tell you it's really great and then still not get distribution. And she had spent 5 years on it. I had spent 3.5 years on it, 4 years on it myself. And so that was the backdrop. And then I graduated from college in 2005. The movie came out at the same time, and very soon after, YouTube launched. And I saw YouTube, and I was like, whoa, this is different. And one of the things was different about it was I had tried to be a part of these online film communities before YouTube. And I was pretty tech savvy and had a bunch of short films, and I could get the videos online, and they never took off. It was very bizarre. There was a lot of community building and not that much sharing of video. And so seeing YouTube, it was so different. And after digging into it, it seemed like it was this confluence of different things. It was like broadband internet and open source tools to do the encoding of the video. And everyone had Flash in their computer. And as we looked into this, Brendan and I started realizing, wait a second, why will there only be one? There shouldn't just be one company that could figure this out. Anyone could do this. It's actually open source things. And so that got us riffing on ideas for what this company could be. Started very close to where I came from, which was going to be a filmmaking competition website. And then very quickly we realized, okay, we don't have connections to brands and all these other things. And it evolved from there. But that's kind of what got us to start.
That's incredible. And I think it even won an Emmy award. It was theoretically,
Yes,
It looked like a success. And then you were not able to really take it forward. Am I right?
That's right. Yeah, we won an Emmy. And the thing that was so interesting about that was, I was involved in a movie that was winning film festivals. And people didn't seem to care. It was not what I thought the reception would be. And at the same time, actually, I saw this competition that was for a movie. It was called Slither, I think. And basically they said, we're going to release a bunch of footage from this movie. Anyone can edit it into a trailer. And then we're going to use the best trailer as the trailer. And I remember seeing this competition thinking, oh my gosh, like if I win this competition, it's probably going to be better for my career than the feature-length documentary. And you get like 25 grand if they use your thing. And I was like, well, that's amazing. And being able to say you did like a national ad, that would be incredible. And so it was this weird thing of like this online filmmaking competition. This was a one-off where like, this would be better for my career than the feature-length the documentary.
Amazing.
And that was what made us think this something really big could be happening here. And that was enough to start, which was like the important part. But it was not an overnight success. Like, you know, we started and then pivoted and found our way to what the beginnings of what Wistia is today. But yeah, it was that understanding and this counterintuitive idea of like, maybe online will really democratize this. And it totally did. It just took it took a lot longer than we thought.
Which always does, by the way, which is interesting because there's these myths that just cause us to think that things will happen faster. But talk to us for a second. So you were a very early adapter, and you really understood what is the change that is happening, and you knew that you want to jump on this. But share a little bit around the pivots that you needed to do, the experimentation that you needed to do in order to find the market fit, which is always just such a hard thing to do because everything looks so green on the other side.
Yes. I mean, so we started on this idea of the competition website, and we quickly realized we needed a two-sided market. Like, to make it a real business, we'd have to have a lot of people who wanted competitions. And then we'd also need a lot of filmmakers to do the creation of the content. And we're like, well, which brands do we know? Like, well, we don't know any of them. Like, we're just out of college. Like, are they going to talk to us? And so pretty quickly, we're like, this is not a good idea, actually. This is a bad idea for us to do. But we got off of that idea, and then we went towards our next idea, which was, well, let's still help filmmakers. Maybe what we can do is just help them get their video online, help them build a portfolio. This is an idea that makes a lot of sense because there's been a bunch of companies that have done this successfully. We started doing it. We built a portfolio builder. We built the video hosting part of it. And then we launched it and started trying to get people on it. We got maybe like 500 active people using this thing, which at that time, again, I thought we'd be doing this for 6 months. I thought it would go viral. Side note, we did some side projects that did go viral. So we had actually experienced that. And this was not viral. This was like slow, steady kind of getting more people on there. And we started thinking we need to make money because, how are you supposed to survive? We didn't raise money at this point. And my co-founder and I were like a year out of college when we started. And the only reason we could survive is we were living in a 10-person house. And it was so unbelievably cheap. Like, my girlfriend and I split a room, and we split food with everyone in the house. So this is real, my total expenses on food per week at that time were $15 a week. So I spent $60 on food a month, and my rent was $320, and I bought nothing else. So basically I was living on $400 like a month. And my co-founder Brendan was basically in the same spot. And that is the only reason we were able to start the business, was like, we got our expenses so low. But we still were going to run out of money. And so we had the portfolio site. We're like, oh, if we put ads on this, how much money could we make? And we'd had a thing go viral that we put ads on, and we made very little money. And we're like, might not be the way. We tried to talk to the people who were building the portfolio, and they're like, this site's cool, but like, what am I going to pay for? Like, yeah, you already gave me the thing. Like, it's like, this doesn't seem good. And the one thing we were doing that I would highly encourage anyone who's at the early stage to do is we're just going to a lot of meetups and meeting a lot of people. And so every month we're going to a couple of these things at least, and just getting out there and talking to people and saying, everyone says, has their business card and says what they're doing. And we're like, oh, we're the video guys. We're trying to do video stuff. And then people would be like, can you help my business with video? And we'd be like, no, like, we help artists. Like, we're not in this to help businesses. And let me tell you, when we were like 3 months from running out of money, we started talking to the businesses pretty quickly. And what we discovered was that some of the things we had built were actually quite valuable, but not in the way they were packaged. So We'd built the video hosting. We'd built a private way for people to share videos. And that was so that, I used to edit movies and like I'd ship DVDs every night and it didn't make sense. Like, why can't you just put it online? So we kind of solved that problem and people saw that and they're like, that's interesting. Just this private, secure way to share stuff. But they weren't filmmakers. They were companies. And so we went into our first potential customer, told them we could give them this thing to privately share video, made up a price. And they said, if you can give this to us, we'll pay you. And so we did it and they paid us. And then, that's how it started. And it was like one new customer each month at the beginning, which again felt painfully slow. But looking back on it was actually like kind of fast.
Right. And it's the steady, and actually, there's actually a need. You're actually creating medicine versus a vitamin. Like people actually need it, willing to pay,
Exactly.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And the thing that really was like the thing that opened our eyes was we were quickly talking to huge brands. So like our first customer was a medical device company. Then we started talking to PBS, and we started talking to a production company as our second customer. Our like fifth customer is Cirque du Soleil.
Oh, nice.
And they were using us to share videos privately of people who like apply to be in Cirque. So it was like fire breathers and gymnastics would upload it to Wistia, and then their team would look at it. And it was like, it's so crazy to me in hindsight I remember so vividly doing the demo to them, sitting on the foot of my bed in this 10-person house. Brendan's upstairs in his bedroom. There's no video. You can't see anybody at this point. It's literally just talk and me just so stressed as I'm doing the demo, just like can't believe that I'm talking to these people. And they're like, this looks good. I'll do it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I mean, we couldn't even take their credit card. Like we were like faxing things to close deals at that point. It was ludicrous.
So I love this story. And then you need to go raise capital, right? Which is very, very hard. Can you talk a little bit about it? Because again, I think there's a little bit of a myth. We see all these people raising millions and you're like, okay. And then, it's just so hard to continue when you get the first few no's. Tell us more, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, so we got to about 6 or 7 customers and we realized, okay, like this is going to be bigger than we thought. But we need help. Like, and we're figuring out everything ourselves. And Brendan's building everything himself. I'm doing all the sales and marketing. I'm like blogging 2 times a day. It's not that different from now in some respects, which is kind of funny. But, and we're like, we need help. And through all those meetups we're going to, we'd met some people we really liked who seemed like they believed in what we were doing. And we started to realize, hey, maybe we should hire 2 of these people. Like there's this sales guy and this engineer. Like we need help on building the product faster. An engineer would be good. And then we need someone who knows how to sell, we think. And actually he closed a deal before he even joined the company. Like he sold a Wistia account to prove to us that he was like going to be a good hire.
That's a good hire, by the way.
They were adults and we were children. And so they needed real salaries where we were still at this point, like, we basically now we're covering our basic living expenses. So I'm getting $400 a month. The Brendan's getting $400 a month. We've not changed our living expenses. We're saving money on top of that, which is an incredible feeling. But like, I can't hire someone for $100,000 or something.
Of course.
So it's through that. It's through wanting to hire them. We think, okay, if we hire people, we'll go faster. We should raise money. And so we set out trying to raise angel money. And I quickly found my way to one angel investor, this guy, Ashton Peary. And he was super interested and asked a lot of good questions. And he also like really believed that we could take this a very long way. Like it was kind of surprising to meet this person who's like, oh, of course you could take this. This will be massive. And I'm like, oh, you think this could be massive? He's like, oh, this will be huge. This will be so big. And like, he got excited. And then we just kind of hustled our way again, randomly through the community, meeting random folks. And it probably took us like 5 months or so to close the first round. And the interesting thing was like we'd show the deck and we'd show our current customers, show prospective customers. And on the list of prospective customers was HBO. And we were talking to HBO about them using us for all their dailies, which no one could believe. Me as a filmmaker, I could not believe this. It was insane. Like I remember when we first started talking to them, I didn't really believe it was them. They said, we just want to try the product. Like, okay. And they start uploading footage in, and we go look. And it's like footage from The Sopranos that no one's ever seen. Like behind the scenes footage of The Sopranos. That's the first thing that gets uploaded. So what that meant was it was extremely attractive to angel investors. Like when they saw this, they're like, oh, wow, these children are like talking to this company about a deal like this. And by the way, the quoted size of the deal was like $750,000 a year. So we looked at, I'm like, we're just got it made. Like this is going to happen so fast and all this kind of stuff. And without going too long into this story, we eventually actually had to walk away from the deal right before we were going to close the angel round. And we had to walk away from it because they were really interested in what we were doing. They're like, hey, for us to use this, it needs to be on premise. We think like it needs to like be in a closet basically at HBO's offices, which is terrifying to us because it was all in the cloud and we'd never done a deal like this. And we realized that if we were to do that, we would probably have to move to LA. And that was the only way we'd be able to support it. And then if we were to move to LA and we just got the movie studios, like, is this really going to be that big of a market? And we were just like, it sounds amazing. So we decided to say no. And I remember the feeling of going back to the Angels and telling them, hey, like, we said no to HBO. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's like, and I thought that no one would write a check. And again, I think this is one of those moments that it took many years for me to realize that's probably why they wrote the check, was like, we actually had conviction of what we're trying to do, which was build this thing for SMBs and, not go do it on prem and whatever. So yeah, I could go on and on about that, but
Wow.
it was very hard, but also like, in a way, it was just being honest, I think, about where we were and then being optimistic about what we believed, but also saying like, it might not work.
And I think when we'll talk about it, because you as a co-founder, when you start a company, you need to, or even when you just lead a company, you need to make some really hard decisions, and you're never going to have all the data you want in order to make the right decision, but you're going to have to make those decisions. And you made some hard decisions. We're going to talk about some of them in a second. But before that, you made this big decision in order to basically scale the company. How do you look at scale of the company? Because you always kind of look at that 10x, like how can I go not a little bit better, not a little. So how do you look at that a little, Chris?
Today, how do I look at it?
Yeah, and what changed maybe also, do you think?
Well, I think the thing that I underappreciated back then that I appreciate now is that a lot of times, like we don't realize how long it takes before something works, right? Like I was talking about this before. Like you think it's going to happen really fast, and often it's like you have a good idea. It often takes a lot longer than you think. But once it's working, there's usually a reason why. It might be that you have like a great brand and an easy to use product in a market that's like craving this, like that's the hole in the market. It might be because you have the cheapest solution to an age-old problem that everyone understands. So if you come in really cheap, like they're going to pay attention. It might be they're doing something completely new that no one's ever seen before, and it causes like a different person to be the buyer or something of a product than it could be. It changes where the budget is. Whatever it is, often we get something working, and when growth starts to happen, to keep growing, you often just have to keep doing that thing. It's just how it shows up and how you have to accomplish it is very different. So you want to stay focused on what's different and unique, but like the how you get there might change tremendously. And so what I think we didn't really appreciate at the time was that what people wanted was something really easy to use and something that anyone who was using video could use confidently. We did a lot of different things, but if you look at where we are now, that's basically exactly the same thing that we do today. When things started to take off for us, it was when we started having a lot of fun in our brand and we started being ourselves. Like we were transparent about the fact that we were a 6-person company when we were later 6 people. We made fun, silly videos, which was the counterintuitive thing to do because businesses are serious and B2B is serious. So why would you trust a company that's making these fun, silly videos? It was like, no, because we're actually authentic and we're not unafraid to share who we are. That is attractive. And that worked in our market. It also meant we're using our product in the marketing. And you look back and like when I pull the thread, it's like the same exact thing today. But it wasn't obvious then that those were the things. It was like those things and 15 other things we were doing. And the hard part was sorting through which of the pieces are actually driving growth and which are actually not. And so when I think about decisions around what we're going to do, about what we're going to build, like any big decision, I try to look at it through that lens. Like, how can we keep delivering on the thing that caused stuff to work in the first place? And how do we stay focused? Like, it's actually focus is the hard part usually. But the last piece is the way we deliver. It's very, very different. The product's different, the brand is different, the content's different, the people's different. Spend more on ads, all these different types of things, but ultimately, the thing you're delivering kind of stays the same.
Right. And I want to go there for a second with you, Chris, because I think a brand is something, or, some kind of a balance between what you want to be perceived and authenticity is really confusing, especially when you're talking sometimes to these big brands. You want to sound very serious and official versus fun and engaging and, happy, weird videos. How do you make sense out of it as a leader that, on one hand, people tell you, you will not be fired if you're an IBM, but you will be fired if you're a startup coming in, right? And you screw up. So how do you balance it? And you landed on the fun, authentic side. How did you go around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's whatever needs to work for your market. So I think if we were doing outbound sales and we were selling enterprise deals, you see people do wild, crazy things to try to get someone's attention. But ultimately, if you're selling a massive deal, you're helping people decrease risk or manage costs or increase revenue. They have to believe you're going to do that. So a brand that has them believing that is really important. And I think for us, what we found is that like a lot of people knew that they needed to use video, but that they were afraid. And they're particularly afraid they're going to hurt their brand. That was one of the most common things we heard was like, oh man, if I use video and it goes poorly, it's going to hurt my brand. I still hear that all the time. Like people afraid to get on camera, exactly as you're saying. And so if we can show you irreverent, silly, funny, but educational things, and you can kind of subconsciously realize like for example, we have a campaign right now that's called Webinar Wizard, and it's a song. And it's an incredible song. It's really amazing. You can see if you go to wistia.com/webinar wizard. And we're doing all these ads with this thing, and there's this wizard dancing around, and like the song gets stuck in your head. Like this thing, if you see it, you're like, wow, this is silly, this is absurd, but it's amazing. I get it. Like if you can kind of put that together subconsciously, know like, hey, if they can do this, then what can I do? That's like permission almost to use the product, right? And we didn't understand. We were kind of just doing all this stuff. I didn't understand the connections earlier on to how much like what we really need to do with our brand was give people permission to market in this different way, show themselves in a different way. And then if you use Wistia and you feel like this is a place you can do that, then we're delivering, right? And so it just kind of depends on the customer. And I guess that's my point is like, if you have something that's working early, what you want to do is just pay super close attention to why is it working? And often if you could figure that out, then you could scale it.
And what I'm hearing also is your growth as a leader, right? From somebody, right from the dorm rooms, basically in college, right? And suddenly, running a 200 people team, et cetera, multi-million. What do you feel helped you grow as a leader? to be able, with your money mindset, suddenly dealing with, a lot of income and revenue, etc., debt sometimes, right? Like what helped you grow there?
Yeah, I mean, on the money side, you basically figure out that if like in the early days, we're making decisions. Sometimes decisions scare you. You're like, oh man, this really needs to work, and so you feel this commitment to the decision and the product or whatever it is you're doing. Turns out you still want that feeling. Like you crave that feeling. I think that's really important. Is like, yeah, the business gets bigger, so those types of decisions are bigger, and ultimately, like, the risks you're taking might feel somewhat similar to the early days. Not the same. It's not life or death the way it is early days often, but it is often the difference between growth or not. And so you start to search for that feeling, get comfortable with that feeling. I think the other thing is like, when you're in it, it's very hard to know if you're doing the right stuff. But if you do it long enough, you end up kind of training your intuition. Like Brendan and I like to say, like we had instincts that turn to conviction through failure.
Tell me more.
So like, we'd have an instinct on some way of the ways we make decisions on things we put in the product, on how we decide to launch products, on almost anything. And then when we'd go against our instinct and it wouldn't work, go, like, even though it was the first time I was doing it, my instinct was actually right. So now it's moved from instinct to like, I have conviction, like this is the way.
Right.
And I think that there's going to be a lot of things like that in your business where you need to hold the line on a hard decision where you don't have data or results for a long time. Like often the most valuable things, they don't happen quickly. Like they take a long time. And so having conviction to stick with your approach is really, really, really important in those cases. And in the early days, it's trial by fire. And so often you have to do that. When you get bigger, you often don't have to. You have more options. And that actually creates more choice. And that can be a problem because you can lose focus or not take things as far as you should.
Incredible. And I feel like, what you just said, I had to write it down, right? Because that happens a lot in hiring. That happens a lot with, different growths in different directions.
Hiring's classic mistake zone for this.
Right?
Yes.
I was just like, okay, tick the box. But as a leader, how do you balance between, on one hand, you want the chaos, you want the speed, you want the creativity, you want to let your teams get freedom, but on the other hand, you need to drive results and not throw spaghetti on the wall. How do you see it as a leader?
Yeah, the way that we do this now is we're trying to be really clear about our strategy, like our mission and vision, where we're going, who our target customer is. And then we have kind of like a big list of assumptions that we're constantly testing. And we're making plans based on the assumptions, and as we make investments, we say, are these assumptions working or not? And like, there's a constant learning element in the business. And then what we do is I found actually what you want is the right structure. So you want to give people the right structure and ownership so that they can actually work creatively to solve the problems that they're working on. And so for us today, what that looks like is we have OKRs. We have like a 3-year goal, and then we have OKRs for the year that ladder into that 3-year goal. And they basically are all customer problems. And so we don't presume to know the solution in most cases. Every once in a while, we'll know it, but usually we say we don't know what the solution is. We just know it's a really important problem to solve. And so then what you want is a team that can stay on that problem. And what I've learned over and over again is like, if you get a group of smart people, you get the right balance of a team, they're creative, they plan, they're thoughtful, they learn really quickly, then basically what you need to do is basically get it out of their way as much as possible and say, the most important thing is for you to ship consistently. And so we encourage everyone on our teams to try to be absolutely shipping constantly. Product teams ship every 2 weeks. Go-to-market teams are responding to that. So we have like every day there's new things going live in the product every single day. And we don't necessarily know which of the things are going to be the biggest or the most impactful, but we do know the customer problems we're trying to solve. And those stay the same as we constantly ship through different solutions. And so really it's about speed. And the way you get the speed is by creating enough structure so that and ownership so that the teams know, hey, I have freedom in this lane. And then what we praise is fast shipping.
Which I love because that's how you learn, right? That adaptability, that experimentation, you get the feedback really quick instead of, I still remember some of my enterprise companies that I was with, we had, the requirements and 9 months or 12 months later, something would ship and the requirements probably already changed. So I think that agility is really critical, I assume.
It's also just this basic assumption of like, we don't know all the answers. So if you don't know all the answers, like let's say you're 50% right, 50% wrong when you make decisions. Okay, that could, if you make like launch one thing a year, that could be bad. Like you might have a year where your one thing sucks. So instead, if you could break it into smaller pieces, then maybe you can actually ship much faster. You waste less time. The speed of learning goes up, and ultimately the pace of improvement is much faster. And so it actually took us a long time to figure this out of how to do this at scale. And now it's crazy. It's unbelievable. Like if you were to look in our Slack and see what's happening, every single day there's new things go out the door. Tons and tons and tons of new things are working incredibly well. And when I go back to what input drives this output, it is shipping customer value every 2 weeks.
Amazing. Chris, could you share a hard moment? Because again, you're running this big thing for many years now. What was a hard moment that you needed to like catch yourself?
I mean, there's been a lot. So,
Of course.
The first hard moment I think about when you say that, is this just too much of a story that's like, look how great I am? I don't know. You tell me. But
It's okay.
the first hard moment was after we raised money. We had like 10 paying customers. We had this amazing forecast. I was pretty sure that in like 2 or 3 months, we're going to be profitable. And then we didn't close a single deal for like 4 months. And that was hard. That was painful. And right at the last second before we raised the money, we were working on this one bigger deal. It was like $10,000 a year. And we closed it. It's like, this is going to be what every deal is like. They're all going to be like $10,000 a year. So then that summer, we just raised the money. We had all these new investors like, let's look at you all. And we're like, yeah, we're going enterprise. We're going to do 10,000 a year deals. And so that's what we tried to sell that summer and basically couldn't close a single one. And the guy who joined us to help with sales, I remember vividly of October of that year, he's on the phone with somebody. And he's like, okay, yes, you're going to do it. Fantastic. That's amazing. I'll send over the order form right now. Click. And we're like, oh my God, we broke our drought. Like we got a customer and like, who's the customer? And he's like, oh, remember that machine company I was telling you about, this machine and tooling company? We're like, yeah. He's like, well, the marketer there wants to use us for his kids' hockey team. And we're like, oh, okay. How much is the deal? He's like, oh, I sold it to them for $12 a month. And we're like, oh, it's just like, this isn't going to be good. And at the time we had this sheet we were all in person, a sheet on the office that showed every day in the month and like how many deals. And Brendan went up there and he put like a little line and it was like $12 and we were losing $40,000 a month. So our goal was to get to break even. And he just like was like 39,988 or whatever. And that was pretty rough. But the funny thing is, of course, we realized like we need to give ourselves more flexibility. It's too early to pick just one size customer. And so the person who's doing sales starts testing more pricing. We start closing deals at $100 a month, at $150 a month, and yada, yada. And then eventually by that next summer, we have 30 paying customers. We're like, okay, this is better. And we make a change to start. You could find the price online. You could sign up online. It would start at $79 a month. And that summer, we went from 30 paying customers to 200. And I remember thinking, oh my God, we've finally done it. Like, this is it. And then I got a call from our lawyers and they're like, hey, remember that funding round you raised? We never sent you the bill. So you need to pay us this bill now. And it was a $40,000 bill. And we had like $75,000 in the bank. So half our money was going to go, and then we were going to have payroll, and very quickly we're going to run out of money. And so that was another, it was like one hard moment, okay, over it, and another extremely hard moment. And we were just really fortunate that summer had turned out the way that it did, because I went to one of our angels and I was like, hey, I've got good news and bad news. Here's the bad news. Like, we're going to run out of money. It happened really suddenly. We got this huge bill we weren't expecting. But the good news is, like, look at this customer graph. Like, I think if we just keep doing this, like, it's going to work. And he looked at this and he was like, you're right. And he wired us like a check for $100,000. And then he said, Chris, I want to fly you around on my jet. And I want to help you close this round because I don't want you to waste any time. And we went around and basically within a few days, like, closed the round. And that was the last time we ever raised equity.
Incredible. Oh my God. I mean, the roller coaster, how do you even get up in the morning and keep on going? Like, what do you do? Force yourself. What else?
It is a roller coaster. I mean, I think that's, you start to love it, I think, is the thing, actually. You start to realize that, like, a lot of the hard moments, what it takes is like focus and commitment and working with great people. And that's how you get through hard moments. Sometimes the hard moments are short and sometimes they're really long. But it basically always comes back to, if the culture's right, like if the people you're working with like give you energy, and if those people believe in what you're trying to do, like, it's a lot easier to get through the hard moments.
And it's incredible. And I think the proof, if you will, I mean, first of all, you've been around for a while. You had an exit opportunity. You decided to decline, which is insane, or not. But tell me that's clearly that you didn't burn out. Like, it means that you want to stay. What made you decide not to sell?
Not to sell? Yeah. So basically, we had this opportunity to sell the business. 3 different companies trying to acquire us. Brendan and I talk about it all the time. And we eventually start getting to, what would we do if we sold? Okay, well, it's a life-changing amount of money. Would not have to work again. But would we work again? We're like, well, we'd work again. The two of us would work together. That's clear. Like, we have a unique partnership. We're still best friends. We've been best friends from the beginning.
Amazing.
We're still best friends. By the way you do that is you put your friendship first, which actually matters, because then, like, you show up and you care and you give each other hard feedback and all that kind of stuff. Counterintuitive thing. But anyway, we'd work together. What type of market would we get into? Well, like, we'd get into this like SMB market. We think it's underserved. We would still focus on video, where this is like 2016, 2017. And it feels like the tech around video is changing tremendously. Like, it's getting cheaper and cheaper to make videos. And so there's more ways that people can use videos. So, like, okay, we'd do that. We'd focus on a company that was like where we could be really creative, and we'd run the business really profitably, because we, at that moment, were not running profitably. We had run profitably for many years after we got traction. And then we ran at a loss trying to grow faster. And we admit to ourselves in this moment that it's not working. We're both unhappy. And the thing we would do is we just basically try to rebuild Wistia. That's what we would do if we sold the company. So it seems very stupid to give up on this company 10 years in, when we're still in control and, like, we could fix it. And so that is what led us to say, hey, like, actually, let's not sell. Let's just get this business back to a better place, to a place where we feel like it's creatively fulfilling, but also we think that's going to do better. Let's get back to being profitable. That we think that counterintuitively, that's actually going to let us be more long-term focused, more patient in our investments if we're profitable. And we think it'll probably be more fun. And so worst case scenario is, like, if it doesn't work, we're going to have to sell the business anyway. But at least we'll have tried. Like, we bet on ourselves in the first place. Like, let's bet again. And so we got really excited. And I think this is an interesting point here, because we got so excited. And actually, the reality is, we're still losing $300,000 a month at this moment. Bank accounts going down. We have lots of things that aren't working in the business. You would think this was like a bad moment, and you would think this would be very stressful. Like, on the roller coaster, this should seem like the bottom. And it kind of was. But the thing that was funny is what turned it around was instantly having a plan. We're like, we're gonna raise debt, and actually, because we're not gonna sell, we're gonna like buy back control from our investors, and we're gonna get a return for our employees. It'll be like we sold; they'll all be happy, but for us, it's gonna force us to be profitable, and we think that's the right thing for the business. And so we basically are signing on to take on debt, running at a loss, have to turn it around. And like, I wasn't stressed because I had a plan. I was like sleeping really well. I was really relaxed. And so that was kind of funny. It was like, oh, having the plan is the important part. And then we went and enacted the plan, raised the debt, 17 million in debt, did the buyback, got the business back to being profitable pretty quickly. And then of course, the focus on the other side of this allowed us to get much more profitable than we were expecting, much more rapidly. The team, suddenly we'd done something pretty polarizing, and that meant that everyone who was there really wanted to be there. And we didn't understand that there were people who were there for the kind of the wrong reasons. And so suddenly the team felt much more unified and excited. Hiring, when we started hiring again, got much easier. It was like all like upside down backwards. And it was just basically having conviction about what we actually want to build. And I don't know. It worked out better than I could have imagined.
That's incredible. And I think not only from the business side of you, but having that plan, also you started being very intentional about the life that you want to live together with this business. And
that's right.
Can you share a little bit? Because I think that's super interesting because...
Yeah. Well, so I remember my wife was like, so you're not going to sell? I was like, no. She's like, you've told me for a long time you're going to sell this business someday. And like, we're waiting to do stuff until he sells. I was like, and you know what I decided was like, maybe what if we act like we sold? Like, what if instead of selling, like, let's act like we did sell the business. What would we do? And what we got to was, maybe we should just take real vacations. Like, maybe we should really start taking very real vacations and taking more time off, and really giving more like ownership and responsibility to more people on the team. And it was interesting timing for me because my first child, she was probably 1.5 when this was all happening. And so I was like, yeah, I will take more vacation. I'll spend more time with my family. And of course, again, what ends up happening is you start taking more vacation, and it turns out, a lot of people didn't need you for certain things. So I would come back from vacation and people would have made all these decisions that previously I would have been involved in. And guess what? They mostly made great decisions. And so what did that mean? I get less emails now and I'm in less meetings. I was like, this is amazing.
And the team is growing.
The team is growing and people just are taking more responsibility. I didn't understand how vacations kind of cause people to take more responsibility. And also sometimes things didn't go well. And then you figured that out. And it was like, I'm holding this thing together. And I didn't think that I didn't realize how much I was doing that. And so, all these, again, just really counterintuitive things. But then when you start like living a life while having a business, you start realizing like it's actually really easy to keep doing this. And as long as kind of the way I would sum it up is building a business is stressful. It's just like trying to get really in shape or get really strong or something. Like go to the gym, lift a bunch of weights, you stress your body. If you just keep lifting every day and you never take a rest, you literally don't recover and you don't get any stronger. But if you actually take rests, you do. So what does it look like at work? You get stressed. But if you actually take weekends off and you actually take vacations, you recover. And guess what? It becomes easier to handle more stress. You're training your body. You're training your mind. And so I think that's, again, like one of the things that people miss is they go way too hard, especially after the business is up and running, and then they burn out. And so if you take actual breaks, you don't burn out. And this is different than what I was doing at the beginning, to be clear. I was working every weekend. I was working at nights. I was doing all that stuff. But once we had enough momentum, I was able to add in the time, and it had like a tremendous impact.
Right. And I love that distinction, right? Because I think there's also this myth of, let me just sit on the beach all day and create freedom and success. That doesn't happen. You do need to work hard. But sometimes we say life is in phases, like different things will be important for you in different phases of your life, and just go all in, whatever it is. But you also had, and I'm just curious where it stands for you. Like, there's always this, like, do you build the brand of the business? Do you build a personal brand? Where do you see that? Because I think you also shifted a little bit, and I think it's super fascinating to me.
Yes. So early days of Wistia, I was just like constantly posting. I said before we had this portfolio site, I was like, what can I do? I was like, I can build a blog. And I posted twice a day and made this creative arts blog. And I had no idea how successful it was. I thought it sucked. And I had thousands of people subscribing to the newsletter, reading all the stuff, and I was like, oh, okay. Like in hindsight, I was like, I didn't realize that happened there. And then when we figured out Wistia, I was basically sharing the story on Twitter all the time. Like, we did this thing today, that thing, it started with like what I had for lunch, and it turned into, here's this product feature, we're thinking about X, Y, Z. And that worked, I thought, but I wasn't really sure how well it was working. And at some point I stopped doing it, probably like 2019. I was like, I don't really feel like this is worth my time as much anymore. So I stopped investing in it. And then COVID happened and I really stopped doing it. And then in like 2022 or so, I felt like, wow, like we are executing really well. We have set off on this bigger, broader strategy. Wistia is no longer just like this hosting and analytics platform. We're building editing tools. We're building creation tools. We're building a webinar platform. We're building group recording. We have all these things now, but like we're building them then. Like, what can I uniquely do? Like, what can I do that just I can do? And I started thinking, like, I can tell the company's story in a different way. Like, I can tell the company's story from my perspective. And I used to do that, and I think it was working, and I just didn't keep doing it. And so in 2022, I started posting a little bit on LinkedIn and posting about Wistia, but posting about like my life as an entrepreneur, posting about what it's like to be like a parent as an entrepreneur, posting about some of my other interests. And a lot of stuff took off. And I was like, whoa, look at these interactions. And then over time, I've invested more and more in it and realized some really interesting things about building a personal brand. And it's shifted how I think about brand building. Where I still think there's a place to be building a company brand. I think you're crazy not to be building a company brand. But like the expectations for startups for those brands keeps getting elevated. Like distribution is free, but that means you're competing with everybody. So you're competing with Netflix, like you're competing with viral YouTube videos, you're competing with like games, you're competing with everything as a company brand. And we're also as a society being being trained to trust company brands less. And actually, if you look at how we're spending our time on social media where we trust individual people. And I think this is rooted in like something that's always been true, which is if you have a group of friends and you have your like techie nerd friend, you ask them tech advice. You have your friend who's really into soccer, you ask them soccer advice. Like that's how it works. Like you have friends, you ask word of mouth. But now it's possible to build these relationships with people in kind of a parasocial way online. And so we have our friends in person and we have our like online friends who we trust on different topics. But on the B2C side, this has become a tremendous way of how we discover and learn about products. It's becoming the dominant way. And so what I've realized is it's starting to really happen on B2B too. And so it's kind of fortuitous that I kind of looked at this like telling the company story approach thing on LinkedIn. Because now like the content that we post on my LinkedIn is like gets huge numbers of organic views. And it's not all Wistia, it's like 10% Wistia or something. But some of it is. And we have like it's very different how it's engaged with. Like if we post something on my LinkedIn, people ask questions and give feedback and in a way that is very like you were talking to a person. Then on the company page, like people will be like, this is cool, they'll like it, but they don't give the same kind of feedback and stuff. And so I realized basically we all have an opportunity to build both of these things, like build the company brand and build the personal brand. The difference with the company brand is like you can't get free distribution anymore. Like all the social platforms, if you want to get your stuff seen, you basically have to pay. But the social platforms, if they basically force individuals to pay, they're going to lose all the content. And so therefore, it seems likely that like the individual content will probably continue to be free. So I look at it as kind of like paid
Right.
versus organic. Like a lot easier to get organic on personal, a lot easier to do the paid thing on the company brand.
And that's exactly what we're doing. And I think that's just so important for listeners to understand. You might be posting from a business page, but that usually going to go crickets unless you pay for it. So if you really want to build your own brand, that's going to take you further, but also is going to paint that more authenticity. If people will relate to you better. And I just love that. So for those who don't know Wistia enough, and why should they use Wistia versus YouTube? I can tell you what we're used to, but I'm curious what you say, Chris.
Yeah, so I just say like Wistia is a video marketing platform. Everything we do is about making it easy for you to get more value out of your video and enable you to like use video better. So we have a player. That's really the start of the company, is like having this player and hosting. The player looks amazing. It's really fast. Gives you amazing analytics. There's no related videos. You control the whole thing. You can put your brand in. You can add calls to action. You can collect the leads. And so it's just very different from YouTube, because YouTube is not about that. YouTube's about getting you to spend time watching things on YouTube. And I love YouTube. I'm constantly watching things on YouTube. But the stuff that there's a reason why they have recommended videos. There's a reason why they do that. Is like they want as much watch time as possible, and then they want to put ads on it. And obviously, if you're making content that's low in your funnel or you're selling access to or something, you don't want ads on it. You don't want related videos. So that's where the business started. And now what we've really done is said, hey, we see that like as video has changed, it's become much easier for anyone to make a video. Like you and I are using a remote recording platform. Things like this didn't exist like in like 2018. We all see our computer as a camera now, and that has changed expectations for video at work. And so I see all the time, like someone says to a product marketer, hey, can you make a launch video for this? You didn't used to say that. You used to say, do we have a budget to shoot a video? Now you say, can you make it? And so expectations have changed for video. A lot of our customers are basically, their video is a part of their job. It's not their whole job. And they're using like 15 tools to get their jobs done. And so we said, hey, can we just maybe cut that down? Can we evolve Wistia to be more of an all-in-one platform? And by doing that, we can save you like huge amounts of time in the in-between of things. And that led us to basically building an editor into Wistia that uses AI, so you can edit by editing the transcript and has music and stuff like that. Building recording tools. So we have single person recording, we have group recording. We have a social clips tool, so you can take long form stuff. It'll help you find clips and you can cut it down to put it on social. And then we have a webinar platform. And the way you put these things together depends on what you're trying to do. But we'll see people who, they do a live event, their recording is instantly in their Wistia account, they edit it. We see most webinars are edited. And then they can quickly publish it from the same place or send it to an email list or make clips from it to put on social. And the whole thing is, if we can cut down on that time and give you one tool, then you get much more time back, much more leverage. And then often people just end up using video better.
Incredible, Chris. And for us, I mean, we use it for half of the things, or a lot of the things that you just mentioned, the webinars, for those who don't know, if you embed a video from YouTube, right, on some kind of other platform, you're usually going to get other recommendations, and you don't want to send people off your own website, right? So this is, how we started was
Exactly.
Wistia, and from that point on, it became a webinar and so many other things. So I personally love it. Chris, what would be, based on everything that you've gone through, what would be an advice to your younger self if, you could go back in time?
The first thing I would say is be patient. This stuff takes a lot longer than you would think it does or than we're led to believe. But if you can be patient, you can find things that work and you can scale them. And usually we can scale them. Your own imagination is like your limiter on how far you can take stuff if you have a business that's online. The second thing I would say is pay attention to qualitative feedback. I think whenever you're doing something new, you always get qualitative feedback first, which is like people saying, I like this, I don't like this. Things getting mentioned when you're in a sales call, the things that someone tells you in person that they wouldn't have told you otherwise. Like you're going to need to get really good at that, because that's how you get to make decisions faster, is you get a lot of qualitative feedback and you parse it down to like, what are they really saying? So I would say really pay attention to that. And the other thing I would say is you really want to trust your instincts. It's so easy to think that other people have all the advice for how you should build a business because they've done something before. And the thing I've learned over and over again is that once you've started your company, you are the expert. And I think that's a really hard thing to realize. Like, you might be day in, day out on your business. You ask someone else for advice. The advice sounds good. You take it. It doesn't work. You're like, what's going on? And it's like, no, you maybe knew you shouldn't have taken it because you're the expert at your own business. And I think that's the thing that we all forget, is like, we are the experts at our own business. And that is why when you can really start to notice your own instincts, when you're building your instincts and things are working, you should actually trust them. And so that's what I would say if I could go back and do it again.
Ooh, that's really powerful, because somehow you have all these experts and the grass always seems greener on the other side. And, it's just so easy to be tempted to go in all directions. But eventually nobody really knows except for you. But that's also scary to think about that.
It is scary. But when you can flip to realizing like you're the expert, I think and you can trust your instincts, it is extremely exciting. And it is like a hack that lets you go much faster.
Incredible. Chris, thank you so much for coming to the show, for creating Wistia that we love, and for just sharing this incredible story with our listeners. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, look, thank you so much for having me. This is really fun.
More episodes that you're going to love are right around the corner, so definitely make sure to click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Also, who in your life should see this today? Do share this with them. This will inspire and help those you care about, and helps us continue to bring amazing guests. And I will see you there.